You recently launched the Platform Integrity Project. Can you tell us a little bit about the impetus for this?
Sure, Billy. I've served on the platform, the Republican Party platform, I think four times or so. Have been involved in it for over 20 years. And this is, some people say, what's the difference? This is, nobody pays any attention to this. Actually, Ronald Reagan back in 1976 made the same statement because, people say these things don't matter, but they actually do. He said that in the comment that we often hear of him talking about bold colors versus pastels, he was talking about the party platform. And of all people, he probably was the one that helped the party move forward with a visionary document that stated principles that attracted people to the party. And so for the last really 40 years, especially in the last 20 years, we've seen the party platform become something of meaning, especially to social conservatives, Bible believing Christians who are concerned about what's happening in the culture and in our political structure, to see a platform that recognizes that God is the creator, life is created in his image, and that man and woman, there's two genders, and the fact that marriage is a union of a man and a woman is encouraging and draws people into the political process. And Billy, here's something else. Research on party platforms show, this was Professor Lee Payne at Stephen F. Austin University, the parties actually follow these documents. Republicans follow them about 86% of the time. Bottom line, it matters. And we've been hearing that there was going to be an effort to kind of water down, close down the process. And we said, no, we can't do that. This means too much to the Christian community, to the conservative cause, and to the nation. And so that's why we launched this initiative.
That is really interesting, the high percentage of politicians who stand by the platform. In a lot of ways, the platform is a contract, it feels like, between the people and the party who, they're voting for. Would that be an accurate depiction, really, of how this sort of works?
It is, Billy. If you actually look at, again, going back to the research that's been done, and Professor Payne says that over the last 40 years, the two parties have gone in different directions, and the platforms reflect that. But that contrast actually makes it easier for voters to choose which one they want to align with. And we've seen the Republican Party become, quite frankly, more aligned with biblical truth. Now, it is a secular entity, but in our secular government, we have to choose a vehicle. And this is the one that is most reflective of our understanding of biblical truth and in its application to the world in which we live. And so it's been the document that states these things in very clear, bold letters has attracted and engaged many believers in America to get engaged politically and find a home in the Republican Party.
Now, I would imagine the concerns are relatively profound over the possibility of watering down that language. Otherwise, you wouldn't have created this. I mean, how profound are these concerns in your mind in light of what you've seen and heard?
Well, now, I would be very fair. I've had conversations. They've been slow in coming. Part of my concern, Billy, is, as I mentioned, I've been involved in this nearly 20 years. And this is the worst communication that I've had from the RNC leading up to a party convention and platform ever. And so that, number one, there's kind of this cone of silence that's been dropped on. And I'm not saying anything here that I haven't said to the campaign and to the party officials, but there is, as of today, now I'm told that there's some changes that they're going to make some accommodations because of the concerns we've raised. But they said no one outside credentialed delegates could go into the meetings. That's unprecedented. And they've shut out the media. No C-SPAN coverage, no media coverage. That's not the way conservatives do business. We like sunlight. We want the American people to see what we're doing and what we have to offer. That's very concerning to me. And so when I see that, and that I do know, I've not seen the platform. I've had some conversations. They assure me that it's all going to be fine. They are telling me that we probably will have some issues with the life language. But the process matters because this is a document that delegates, 112 delegates, 2 from each state and territory, come together, work on this to reflect where the conservative movement, the Republican Party is at. But it's not good to do that behind closed doors in secrecy. It needs to be open. This gag rule that I call this, the RNC gag rule, should be lifted. The American people should be able to see the deliberation, the debate that formulates the vision of the Republican Party, their priorities, and their principles going forward.
Is it possible, and of course this is just speculation, but is it possible that there's a danger that when the assumption that evangelicals and Christians are just going to vote for one candidate over the other because that person, delivered for them last time, let's say in this case Trump, that maybe they don't have to go as hard on that language or keep with that tradition because they're just going to go anyway with them? Do you think that there could be a mistake being made there if that is the case, of just assuming that people are going to come alongside them because they have in the past?
I think there's a temptation to do that. And look, let me just say, I'm very grateful for the 4 years that we had under President Donald Trump, in a host of areas. I mean, obviously, the 3 Supreme Court justices that were constitutionalists that led to the overturn of Roe v. Wade. That obviously is something that we had worked for many years. But there's so much more: religious freedom, and a strong military defense, a strong economy, so much that the last administration did. However, it's still about the future. We can't live in the past, and we want to make sure that those policies continue. I mean, especially after the 4 years that we've had under this administration that can't tell the difference between a boy and a girl. I mean, we live in a state of total confusion. Look at the economy. I mean, when was the last time you drove through a fast food restaurant and you felt like you were being robbed? It costs so much because of the cost, the inflation. So, yes, we're looking for relief, but we want to make sure it's the right relief. We want to make sure America's headed in the right direction. Billy, what voters need to see is that we've got a choice, a very sharp, contrasting choice between visions and candidates. Look, we've got one that is taking America to hell in a handbasket in the HOV lane as fast as they can. We don't want an option of just driving in the slow lane. We want to go in the opposite direction.
Now, when it comes to the Platform Integrity Project, what are you hoping to specifically accomplish in terms of that sunlight? Because you are going to be opening things up for people to actually see what is happening as this process unfolds.
For the first time ever, we will actually be scoring votes on the party platform. And so when there are key votes that pertain to life, marriage, human sexuality, religious freedom, those core values that, we talk about making America great again. Well, America can't be great until it's morally good. It has to have that foundation. And that's where that's where the evangelicals have come into the party and been welcomed in years past, although, sometimes not so much so. But those are essential planks to the platform. And so we'll be scoring those. Many of these delegates come, they've been picked by the campaign and by some others to come. And they just feel like they're going to be behind closed doors. They're going to make these decisions based on what somebody else wants. Well, we're going to open up the process. If CSAN's not going to be there, if citizens can't be there to see what's going on, we're going to record these votes. And we're going to post them online at the platformintegrityproject.com website. And people will be able to see. So those individuals who some are in elected office, some want to be in elected office, they'll have to give an account to their constituents back home. Did they vote to support the sanctity of human life? Did they vote to support marriage as a union of a man and a woman? Did they welcome God into America as we have in the past? All that's going to be recorded, and people will have to give an account for how they vote.
So let's just talk before we go about the life issue, because obviously the overturning of Roe you mentioned before, that was something that a lot of people thought was never going to happen, would never unfold. The Dobbs decision made that happen. And so a lot to discuss there, but really boiling it down to the public reaction to that, Democrats sort of seeming to think at moments as though it was a winning issue for them to campaign on this, and the GOP trying to find a way to respond to that. When we talk about the language, and obviously we haven't seen this language yet, that will end up being in that platform, how do you think that should be worded? How ideally should the Republican Party, in your view, respond and hold the line on life?
Well, let's provide context. I think there is concern, there's fear, and I think the campaign has this. Republicans in general kind of have this after the midterm election. When what happened is a lot of Republicans ran from the issues and the issue of life. Democrats ran on the issue of abortion, and so when you had a one-sided debate, guess what happened? But there were exceptions to that. There were about a dozen governors who had signed very strong pro-life legislation, from heartbeat to moment of conception bills. And guess what? They all won re-election because they embraced it. They talked about it. They understood the importance of it. They didn't run from it. They weren't silent. So I don't think Republicans have to apologize for moving America back to being a place where we welcome everyone into the world. Regardless of what zip code they were conceived in, we're saying you need to be protected under our laws. So it is a different landscape, no question about it. And I do believe that the bulk of the activity has been, will be, at the state level. I mean, we would not have had Dobbs had it not been for the state of Mississippi. And as a former state policymaker, I think the states is really where the action is. However, there is a federal role. For instance, the Biden administration pushing abortion pills, mifepristone, through the mail, well, that trumps a state's pro-life laws. So you're going to have to address it at that level. But the issue that's been in the party platform since the mid-1980s is the Human Life Amendment, recognizing that all life is created in the image of God and deserving to be protected under our laws. And frankly, Billy, that's a state issue. It's a constitutional amendment. The states will have to approve it. I think that has to stay in the party platform.
You know, and to your point, and this is just a fact, you know, polling again and again and again shows that the majority of Americans, including pro-choice Americans, actually favor capping abortion at a certain point. In fact, the Knights of Columbus, every year, they find that majority ends up being the 3-month point in a pregnancy, right? So without getting into the discussion and debate about that, the reality is most Americans, including pro-choicers, would like to see restrictions on abortion. And that's a fact that gets lost in this conversation. So to your point, talking about you have to engage the issue and talk about it, right? And so this is going to be interesting to see how this unfolds. If people want more information on the Platform Integrity Project, where can they go to get that?
Well, they can text the word platform to 67742. That's platform to 67742. They'll get a link, or they can go to platformintegrityproject.com. It's just easier to text platform to 67742, and they'll get a link and then go right to it.
Well, I so appreciate you taking the time, breaking this all down. We'll continue to cover this story as it unfolds. Thank you.
Thank you, Billy.